Thank the gentleman. Let me recognize the gentleman from New York, Mr. Reed, to inquire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, I got 4 minutes, so I'll just get right to it. I have to follow up on my colleague from Mr. Smith's inquiry about the warning on Medicare. You're a trustee. You're well aware of the statutory requirements. You've served on this committee. And I just found your response to that inquiry very, very, very enlightening. Essentially, how I interpreted your testimony was, we're well aware at HHS of the requirement, and as a trustee for the Medicare system, that we have a 15-day requirement statutorily on us, and we're going to ignore it. We are not going to move in that direction, I guess was the sum and substance of your response. That is very troublesome to me as a member of Congress, to hear from an executive branch agency that is well aware of a statutory obligation to come up with a solution for what is a glooming crisis on the horizon with Medicare insolvency. And the response from the administration is, we know we're supposed to come up with a plan, but we're going to ignore it. Did I interpret your response accurately?
Congressman, no, you did not.
Fascinating to me. And that's why I love this theater that we're in. And you've been in this chamber many, many years, and you have my respect as a member of Congress, and I appreciate the candor in that response. And I'm sure that will be handled elsewhere. But I want to get to a question that my friend from Texas, Mr. Doggett, which I agree with, in regards to the cost of health care. I'm a father of a type 1 diabetic, so insulin cost is very interesting to me. And the best you have in your proposal, in your testimony, to deal with costs is we will work to lower the cost of prescription drugs, such as by capping the cost of insulin at $35 per month. I interpret that as inaccurate. You're doing nothing to lower costs. I agree with my colleague from Texas, Mr. Doggett. All you're doing is capping the expense on who pays it, who is the patient, the recipient, like my son. The bottom line I have for you is that the best you got? Is we're going to use the federal government's authority just to cap cost and not actually get to the actual cost issue? That's the best this administration's coming up with to solve this problem?
Congressman, if you would unshackle the restraint you place on us by law in being able to negotiate prices, like for insulin, we could do far better. But we have to work with the authorities that you give us.
Okay.
You know this, I know
so
this.
Let me just inquire as to your understanding. What is the actual cost of a vial of insulin?
It is far less than what's being charged.
What's the amount?
Congressman, it'd be nice to know, but the transparency that we...
It's about $300 a vial. As a parent?
That's what you think it is, but even you don't know because we don't have the transparency to really go in and dig to find out what it truly costs.
Okay, and that's exactly my point. So the best you came up with is we're going to cap the cost at $35.
Because the laws, as you know, Congressman, you know, I know this because I was where you are, we don't have the authorities to go in and do these things the way we'd like. Give us the authority to negotiate drug prices. Give us the authority to find out behind the curtain what's going on.
You don't have the authority to figure out what it costs to manufacture an actual vial of insulin day to day. You don't have the resources, the skill set, the education, and that tool under your entire agency to figure out what it costs to manufacture a vial of insulin? You're saying because statutorily we can't ask that question of the manufacturers? You've got to be kidding me.
Congressman, unless you know some authority that lets me go behind that curtain to find out from a drug manufacturer what exactly they're charging.
So you've had no conversations with any manufacturers as to what it actually costs them to manufacture drugs?
Numerous.
So you've had conversations with them. So then what is the actual cost of a vial of insulin? Have you had that cost with the manufacturer of insulin?
They're not required by law to give us the information.
Have they given you any information?
They've given us information, but not everything that you've pointed out.
I'd be very much interested in looking at that information if you wouldn't mind sharing it with us, because I want to hold them accountable to the actual cost and use the power of transparency to get these costs to go down.
Thank the gentleman.
My colleague from Texas. Yield back.
Let me recognize the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Kine, to inquire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary,